Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Next Level Podcast. This podcast is, of course, the one where we speak to industry professionals to gain insights about their journeys and also some tips on how to bring ourselves to the next level. Now, this podcast is brought to you by GushCloud in partnership with the National Youth Council as part of Now 2021, an event that's happening at the end of November this year. So make sure you check out the Now Academy page on Instagram for more details. Now, today, I have the one, the only, Sezairi with us.
Hi.
Dude, this is surreal because I watched you on Singapore Idol and here you are on the couch for the Next Level Podcast.
Nice.
Thank you so much for coming on to this
Thanks
podcast.
for having me.
I feel like this is kind of an embarrassing question to ask, but I feel like you need no introduction, but can you maybe just give everybody a quick summary of what you do?
I'm Sezairi. I'm a singer-songwriter, producer, and I have been a recording artist for the past 10 years, writing and recording music and releasing it under the moniker Sezairi.
Absolutely. So I am a huge fan, actually. Would you say that your career first started out with Singapore Idol, or was it even before that?
So the funny story is I only joined Singapore Idol because I got kicked out of music school. So it's a real story. The day that I opened the envelope saying that, hey, we don't want you anymore, I went upstairs and was going to tell my mom when the Singapore Idol commercial happened to come on TV. That's how it connected in my mind.
Right.
Because
right.
I was going to tell my mom that I was going to getting kicked out of school. That thing came up and I saw Taufik Batisa on the stage with confetti and stuff. And when you see things like that, you're like, I could do that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and so that was kind of the impetus at first. But no, my music career started probably 2 or 3 years before that. I had an agent and I was working nights playing music, and that's the reason why I didn't go for my classes in the morning, because
Right.
I'd be playing music until 3 or 4 in the morning, and I was earning quite an okay sum of money for a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
So I thought that, when you're 18 or 19, you're like, yeah, I'm doing music for a living, I got a girlfriend, I'm doing stuff, this is great, I don't need anything else, So it was kind of that brevity of youth.
Of course.
Sense, yeah.
I want to ask you, was there kind of a particular moment where you're like, I want to do music seriously? Was it when you signed up for school, or was it when you first started doing gigs?
I have a long history of flunking out of schools. So
Okay.
the first ever thing that I flunked was my O-levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I flunked my O-levels and I thought that after that I wanted to join the police force. Before I joined the police force, I met a couple of local musicians
Okay.
who were busking there. They were people from the band called Wicked Aura. And I
Okay.
got to know them, and
Okay.
then we started hanging out, and they were telling me that, hey, there's this other, there are many other paths that you can pursue. So one day I started busking illegally. That was the first time I ever performed in public, because throughout secondary school I was the quiet guy. I never really
Right.
went on stage and performed or whatever. And in half an hour I got $50.
Right.
So I was like, hey, $50 for half an hour's work is better than the $4 that I was earning at the hotel that I was working at that time as a waiter, So I
Yep.
was like, hey, let's just go with the flow. When you're 17, you're 18, you don't have anything to lose. That was kind of how it started. I realized at that point that music is something that can really move people to do things they never thought they'd do, like give you money.
Right. Yeah.
Music is something that's so transcendental that you just walk past someone singing and you go like, wow, reminds me of this beautiful moment in my life, and then you just give yourself to that moment.
100%.
Yeah, and I've always felt that since I was young. Going back to that question again, the first thing that ever inspired me to become an artist was the movie That Thing You Do. It's a really, really old Tom Hanks movie.
Okay.
About this band that had a #1 hit and went to tour the world and became the biggest phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was watching that, I was already writing songs as a young kid.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is the best job that anyone could ever possibly have. Write a song, it blows up,
Yeah.
and then you just ride the wave and just be you,
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most beautiful thing ever. So subconsciously, I think I sort of manifested that in more ways than one. Yeah.
Nice. So here's the thing, I've listened to and spoken to so many successful people, right? And people who have put themselves into a journey, let's say for example, Singapore Idol, right? So a lot of people say that, I would say that there's kind of two camps based on what I've observed. People who go into competitions and journeys like that and saying, you know what, whatever comes out of this, I'm just going to enjoy the process. And then there are other people who are like, I'm going into this to win. I'm here to make sure that I do my best, and also my goal is to win. So let me bring you back to 12 years ago when you first signed up for Singapore Idol, right? Like, was it kind of like a mentality that like, yeah, I'm committing myself to let me do my best and I want to win? Or were you kind of just like, I'm just in this for the ride, you know, I'm just gonna enjoy the experience and have fun?
I think I was doing it while knowing that I could win.
Okay.
Yeah. I never went into it going like, I'm not good enough, you know?
Yeah.
I went into it like, yeah, I'm the shit. And that again is the brevity of youth, you know? Like on hindsight, I was like, wow, I was so brave. Those are things that I wouldn't say now, but it worked because I did. I was brave enough to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think like you really need to psych yourself up for your own potential, not you at that point. You might suck at that point, it's fine, whatever. But you need to understand the weight of your own potential, which is, amongst all things, I thought something that I understood for myself. Like I felt like I could do it. If given the right opportunity, the right circumstances, the right amount of time to kind of water the plants and make them flower, I think I could do it,
Let's get deep a little bit. Like, where do you think that mindset comes from?
Oh, I know where that comes from. I'm just probably not comfortable talking about it. But like ever since I was a kid, you know, like I've had a lot of high energy. I'm an ADHD kid, so I never really focused on anything that I didn't want to focus on. So when I focus on something, I do it without thought of anything that's outside of the bubble of what I'm doing. So when I focus on a new project, or when I'm learning a new instrument, it's as no one can disturb me. Time flies. I don't even know what 6 hours feels like 1 hour, you know?
Yeah.
And it's always been like that for me. And the problem is getting me interested in doing that particular thing.
Yeah.
So in my entire life, that's just kind of been it. Like finding things that I know I could be good at because I know that I'll be tunnel vision for it for a while.
Right.
Yeah. And just embracing that, you know, understanding that, hey, I'm not like, I can't do systematic things, so I'll just go with the flow and do things the way I think is good for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, you know, after speaking to people who have been through like reality shows, so one of the things that I realized is that like there's kind of like two mentalities that you can approach this with. One is that like this is after all, at the end of the day, a television show that is meant to entertain people, right? And then the other part of it is that, yes, this is very much so like my industry, whether it's music, whether it's renovations, whether it's interior design, cooking, you know? So obviously to you, like coming from, you know, the music background, like were you kind of, like how did you kind of manage during the competition, like being in the public eye, receiving like, you know, feedback from the judges and everything versus like, you know, making sure that you present yourself as a musician?
Let me tell you a story again.
Sure.
Take you back to 2009, the birth of Twitter.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I was the first adoptee. I was kind of like the first adoptee of Twitter. Within a couple of months that it was released, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Microblogging. This is going to be the future. Wow, right? 2009. And then that was also the first year that people realized they could search their own names on Google and Twitter. So some of the contestants already had realized that, people are using this. We can find out what they're talking about, right? Because before this, you've never had instant feedback.
Yeah.
Before the internet, you didn't know what people talked about, you know? And this was kind of the first time that we had like feedback that way. And after every live episode, everybody would be like, oh my God. So that feedback of what people think of you, back then, people said things without knowing that anyone would know. Yeah. Nowadays, you have this kind of like, you mirror yourself a lot more. You know? You have an understanding of like these things that I say might be used in the future or whatever. So people have a better understanding of that. But back then, people were just saying whatever the hell they wanted to, whether it being abuse or racial slurs or whatever, you know. It was a very common thing to scroll and see. Yeah. So that wasn't a very healthy thing in the competition. I felt like that I was doing also. Yeah. But that was really most of the feedback that we were getting. And that was kind of what shaped that year, or I think like the future of how I see people look at themselves from what other people say about them. Yeah. So my start in the industry was a bit weird because I was completely aware of what everyone thought of me, even when they're smiling at me. Like I know because I've seen something you've said about me. And that thing is so addictive and so destructive, you know, at the start. I've had like 10 years to sort of deal with it and kind of wean myself off it and understand that not everything people say should be taken seriously.
Of course, yeah.
But also at the same time, I felt like the feedback was important for me at that point. Because I was so caught up in wanting to be the best that I took everything seriously. Like every piece of feedback, mostly positive. I think I took with and the negative I took with a pinch of salt, you know, at that time, some of it. But I thought that it really helped me in the future, because right now when I look at comments or when I look at the comment section, I don't feel much, you know. I just feel like I appreciate your opinion.
Yeah.
And your opinion gives me a better sense of other people's opinions, but that's about it.
Yeah.
It takes a bit of time and it takes a bit of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy for sure, because on one hand you want to have your own identity, your own brand, and of course like people's opinions are just opinions, but then you can't help but also like kind of, you know, coming from like a people pleaser kind of, like you want to entertain, you want to make sure that they like you.
Yeah, no, life is a balance, right?
Yeah.
And people's opinions are important.
Yeah.
Like whenever you read something someone says about you online, I don't think you should approach it with like, oh, why is he or why is this? I think you should have an open mind about what people are saying about you, good or bad. And I think it's really up to you to believe that, you know?
Yeah.
Like some people say bad things about you, and that doesn't make it true. What makes it true or not is whether you realize that it's true or not.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about like your headspace during the competition. So in the previous episode, we spoke to John, who's an Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
And his opinion was that like his mindset really was, I'm just gonna take it easy. Like I'm just gonna take it chill. And then he qualified for the Olympics. And then that's when I asked him like, hey, do you like now change your strategy from taking it easy to maybe being a bit more serious? So about like training and whatnot. So like for you, was there ever a point in the competition where you're like, okay, the title is within arm's grab, you know, I'm gonna start getting more serious about this? Like, or were you just did you have that plan like from the start?
No, but the people around me did.
Right.
Yeah, I felt like I was too chill about it because I was so anxious about the fact that if I win, I have to go to NS. And that would be the worst thing for me, because then I'll get a contract. By the time I get out of NS, my contract will be over.
Right.
And everything that I've worked towards kind of just like, why even, you know? So in fact, like when I won Idol, like there's this clip of me going like, oh my God. And everyone was like, oh, he's so good. He's so like, he thinks about God and he's praying. But in my head, I was like, cover my face. I'm going to NS. Oh my God. That was the first thing that was in my head. But yeah, I was like, I didn't really treat it like a competition because everyone was friends also.
Right.
Like, I guess towards the end, it was so stressful that you had no choice but to be friends with each other. And everyone was nice, you know? And we're still friends now.
Yeah.
Which is the cool bit. Like, everyone's gone on to do their own thing in the industry and out of the industry. I don't know. I just never really saw it as a competition because I don't think you can really compete in art. You can, but there's no, you know?
Yeah.
It's not going to be precise.
Yeah.
You know? There's not just something that's like a football game, you know, it's like the score is 5-0 or something.
Yeah,
you know?
Ooh, reference.
Yeah, it's more, oh yeah, oh my God, that's a reference. And I forgot I'm a Liverpool fan. But yeah, I just feel like some things you just can't compete in. And this was one of the things that I just wanted to get it over and done with and then be a recording artist, you know? Not something I went in like, I want to be the best singer or whatever. For me, it's just like, I want to get a contract to be able to record songs that I write. For someone to give me money so I can get into a professional studio and vomit my ideas out because I have so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just the thing that I was thinking about. Not really becoming the best or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a little bit, because I'm so interested to find out, like, the moment after you win, right? Like, that's it. You know, you get the title, you're a winner. Like, you know that you have a contract. Like, what is the mentality after that? Like, do you say, I want to now take a break to make sure that I get like a breathing space before I get creative, or do you go like immediately into like work mode and saying like, I want to keep the momentum going?
I didn't really have a choice because I was enlisting in a couple of days. So I went from indoor stadium, 10,000 people, to like a full battalion at Pulau Tekong.
Okay.
So that was a very, very drastic change for me. And I didn't really have time to think about, like I said, everyone around me was always like, oh, what do we do? Oh, so many Sezairi, so many problems. Everyone was trying to figure out what the best way forward for this was. And what I ended up doing was, while I was serving my national service, so I would be in camp and I'll book out on Fridays, and I'll be in the studio on Saturday mornings to like Sunday nights. Then I'll book in and then just repeat the process over a couple of months. And that was how my first album was born.
Right.
Like, when I listened back to all the older stuff, I was like, oh, my voice sounds like this because I'm so tired. And, like everything just sounds a bit more tired. It felt like a time capsule almost when I listened to that first album. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the thing where we always look back, on the things that we do first. And sometimes we cringe, sometimes we look back at it fondly.
Oh, I always cringe. I almost never look at anything fondly because I always feel like it can be slightly better. And that's the problem, right? You always feel like it can be better. You always feel like it can be better. And then you come up with something and then you think it's the best. And after a while, you're like, I think it can be better. But I think it's a good thing.
I feel like it's a creative people thing. But you're constantly growing and you're constantly...
I wish I could be content. If there's one thing in the world I could wish for, it's just to be happy with the way things are.
Right.
Yeah. In terms of music.
Now, let's get back into your headspace when you first started putting together the album, right? Because I would think that idle mode and like album creating mode is very, very different. So can you maybe describe like that process of like putting together the album for people who probably don't have an idea of like what goes behind constructing and producing and putting together one whole album?
Let's dissect this a little bit.
Sure.
Because I started out as this pigeonhole of a reality show winning artist, right? Where there's a specific formula, like we gotta give him pop songs for continuity.
Right.
With what people have been listening throughout the show. So I felt like I was put into that path. Not that it's a bad path. One, I didn't have any time. I didn't have any time to write the songs. I didn't have any energy to do much. So people were really helping me to become my best self, like, okay, work with this producer, work with this writer, trying to set me up for success. And I thought that was something that I learned. That was probably the most important thing that I learned, is that you can't do this yourself, for sure. Like when I was starting out as a songwriter, I used to think that I want to be that guy, like play all the instruments, I'm going to produce everything, But when I got my foot into this industry, I realized that it's just really too time consuming and too difficult to do everything by yourself. And since then, I've only exclusively worked with collaborators.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's always so important to have someone check you.
Right.
Yeah. Creative people tend to like go off the rails when we get excited about something, and that isn't necessarily always a good thing. So I feel like having people balance out your ideas in the room and try to inject new ones when you're kind of at a dead end, it's the most useful, efficient, and most like liberating feeling, And that's kind of what I learned about making art, is that doing it alone just sucks. And the best way to make art is really to make art with other people, I think. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about like your journey so far, where, after years of doing this, like you constantly put out hits that sometimes do even better and better.
Try.
Yeah, you try, right? So what is the mentality behind like making sure that your songs do well? Because
interesting question.
The I would think that the algorithm, the society, the taste of people change, and as an artist, you would still want to make sure that you're you, right?
I think you shouldn't think about how or where your music is going to be listened to first. I think that's very counterintuitive to being an artist in the first place. So if you look at the math and then go like, I'm going to follow according to this and see if it works out this way, I don't think it's going to work as well as if you look inward and see, what kind of person am I? What kind of things do I say? What kind of things do I say that makes sense with who I am? What kind of things do I say that I can put in a song so that people can see who I am? I think that's like the most important thing about being an artist, because then the connection will be genuine, instead of trying to reverse engineer everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, it took a lot of years to do that, because I was always so anxious about what people thought of me. And I was always told to like keep my relationship a secret. I was with someone for a very long period of time. And I was always told like by this ancient people in the industry, that like you got to have this image, image. And I feel like as an artist, when I first released music, CD shops closed. And there was no digital streaming. So CD shops closed on one side and there was no digital streaming. So when I released music, there was no marketplace for music.
Right.
There was nowhere you could buy or hear music. So that was very it was a weird time for me. And I felt like I needed to take a bit of time to kind of reevaluate what I was gonna do. I became an independent artist for a while. That's something that I think a lot of people don't know, is that from the year 2013 to like 2015, I was an independent artist. Yeah, I was just trying to figure out what my voice was and what kind of music I wanted to make in the future. And what I realized was, after many, many years, and after my first actual hit, I realized that writing songs about this girl that I was trying to hide like became the most successful thing.
Right.
So it was like a weird irony for me, just trying to hide this girl, going like, society won't accept me out in public holding hands, and like people were always watching, I felt,
Yeah.
But once I kind of just like, you know what, I don't care, it became like, oh wow, this is really cool and honest. Right. So that was the irony for me. Like I spent so much time trying to like figure out, because of how I started out in the industry also, that Twitter thing for context, right?
Yeah.
And I always felt so insecure about what people might say about me. So I never really felt like I could say what I wanted to say until that point.
Right.
And that was, I feel like, the biggest turning point for me. Is when I realized that, the things that are most important to you, these are the stories that you should tell.
Right.
Like not just about yourself, but about the people around you, the things you see, the things you eat, the things you consume, And back to your original point about how you should start out as an artist, I feel like really that's really just the most important thing, that authenticity and understanding what you want to say first.
Yeah. So as I would think that if someone is out there wanting to be a musician or a singer, it is on their head, it's in their mind that like they want a hit on their hands, Everybody says that they would like to have a song that do well. So, and I also know that like in today's world, different artists, different people would have different formulas to what works for them. Like Adele has a formula that's going on for her. Like Lil Nas X has his own way of making his songs like successful. So for you, like what have you found works for you and your songs that makes them like a hit?
Oh, that's easy. It's the media you consume. A lot of people think like, this big artist, their songs all sound this way because it's a formula. Yeah, it's not wrong, but it's also because this artist consumes a particular kind of content. If you look at their YouTube algorithm, if you look at the songs they listen to, you'll probably find a similar thread of the songs they listen to make the songs that they produce.
Right.
So I feel like if you're a filmmaker and you don't watch films, that's kind of odd. If you're a musician and you don't listen to music a couple hours a day, if you don't practice 6 hours a day, I feel like it's kind of odd.
Right.
Because I come from music school and that life where the pianist will be in the practice room for like 8 hours a day and then have classes for 4 hours a day. So that's like very normal.
Yeah.
I come from that life where you should immerse yourself in whatever you're doing. Forget about like how to succeed. Look at what you are consuming. Look at what you're watching. Look at what you're listening to, because that will influence what you make. People always tell me, like new artists say, they always ask me what my influences are. I'm so tired of this question. But I think, no, that's the most important question to get to know you. Your influences probably affect you more than you think they do. So it's always good to take a look at that first. Take a look at how you are perceiving things from your own media consumption.
Got it.
Yeah.
So actually just now when you were talking about CD shops closing, my mind immediately went to RIP, HMV,
yeah,
Capital, what's it, like Tower Records, or yeah, like Gramophone, Sembawang.
Yeah. Oh,
dude, like that was a whole era on its own.
Yeah.
And then of course today it's such a different world. People listen to music on streaming platforms like Spotify. They listen to music on YouTube. So obviously that's something I observe as a consumer of music, but as a creator of music, I want to ask you, like, how has that impacted your work or at least maybe your strategy as a musician?
A lot, actually. I think I didn't realize how much streaming would get big until I had like my first hit. Yeah, because for the most part, after the whole idol thing, I kind of considered myself an indie musician.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking like, you know what, for the next couple of years, I'm gonna do like vinyls and like do small tours here and there. I wasn't really thinking of the big picture, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was kind of just focusing on me. But then I think my first song hit 1 million hits and I was like, wow, that's cool. Just this year, I think one of my songs hit platinum in Indonesia, which is like one of the biggest markets in the world. I recently realized Malaysia and Singapore. and it's growing to like, I don't know, yesterday I looked at it and it was like 65 million hits on Spotify.
Wow.
And when I look at the numbers, I kind of want to vomit because I've never thought of myself as that kind of like,
yeah.
Like I always wanted to be like, write a hit song and then ciao, you know? Yeah. But like now that I actually have one, it feels so different because people are coming in from all over the place. You know?
Yeah.
Like I look at the data now and people are sending me messages in languages that I don't even understand. And that's the beauty of, I think, Spotify and Apple Music as opposed to when I was younger. I had to, like, my favorite pastime was Friday when we got released out of school early. We would take the bus to the Heron, and go to HMV and literally spend 2 hours listening to music because they give you free cans, you know, and they were like, let's play whatever, Avril Lavigne, whoo, let's check it out. And like, I would listen to music every Friday for a couple of hours, and that was kind of my scrolling, you know, that was kind of like scrolling, browsing, whatever it was on. And it just felt like that process became a lot easier. That process is now at your fingertips, you know. I feel like it has changed because it's so instantly accessible. Your feelings have become so instantly accessible. Like before this, you'd sit there and go like, how do I share how much I love this song? Like, who do I tell? Which payphone do I need to insert this phone card into? Right now, those feelings can be immediately passed on to someone who can react to that immediately as well. Yeah. And so I think that is what's changed it. Not really the platform, yes, but that is what makes the music what it is, and that's what makes people listen so hard on all these platforms, is because of the instantaneousness of sharing your emotions. I feel more so than like what the song is about or whatever. Because at the end of the day, you listen to something because it affects you strongly in an emotional and sometimes almost physical way. So you're like, this process has now been expedited, right? Yeah. So you listen to something by Sezairi and you go like, this makes me feel so in love. Bam! Everyone suddenly is like, there's this sudden web of like, I don't know where it even comes from. And I wake up one morning and go like, oh, wait, why are all these people suddenly feeling this way? Because one person decided that these emotions are too strong and I need to tell everyone, you know? Yeah. And that's kind of what I look forward to in streaming, I think, is that if you can make a song that just, and it doesn't have to be like a specific kind of pop song, you know? The beautiful thing about Spotify is also like, it's opened up so many niches. Because of this instant access, also people are discovering new music they think they wouldn't like. Right. You know? Like, people in Indonesia wouldn't openly go like, I want to listen to a Singaporean artist today, you know? It's just not something people wake up to think about, you know? People wake up in Canada going like, there's this artist called Sezairi from Singapore that I heard, I want to listen to his music, you know? It doesn't happen that way. More often than not, it's more like, I feel so strongly about this song, you should listen to it. And that's kind of what I think is beautiful about this. It's just like, people share and sharing is so easy. Yeah, so it's kind of made my job a little bit easier too.
Yeah. I would think that a big part of like sharing actually comes from having your songs be put on playlists. Like I think that's such a huge thing today. Like everybody has like playlists that they want to put out, and some playlists go viral and whatnot. So I have read a lot of like interviews with artists and whatnot, and a lot of them say like for them, streaming has changed the way that they think about songwriting, or at least think about like the construction of songs, right? Whereby now they want songs that maybe a little bit shorter than they would be in like 10 years ago, and also like perhaps like the catchy parts come straight right ahead. Like, is that something that you also see yourself doing, or like are you more kind of like a traditional songwriter in that sense?
Personally, I think I'm a balance of both.
Okay.
I mean, I do look at data and go like, this is, because data is so cool.
Yes.
You get to use it, you know?
Yep.
That's so cool that like, it's also instantly available to you. The feedback is available, you know? So obviously you do want to look at your audience and go like, they like this song. This song has like really motivated them to do this and this. So like, obviously as an artist, you'll be like, maybe I should have more of these kinds of songs. But that's a question that I think you need to ask yourself. Like, is that successful song something that you enjoy? For me, like, I haven't had a hit that went out that's like, I hate that song. Why do people like it? You know, I haven't had that yet. Yeah. So probably it's a different case for other people. But for me, like the song that hit so far is like, oh man, I'm so thankful for it because I really love the song. And so that's been slightly different for me. So in my personal opinion, I think I'm pretty balanced. I look at the data, but I also look at kind of where I'm comfortable with. I think one hack that I do is that whenever I write a song, I will think about how I perform it live. I will think about where this song goes in the set list, whether it's like a hype opener song or it's like the 2 songs that I have out of the 10 songs that are slow and I'm sitting in the crowd. So I think about that when I write, so that when I go and tour and perform, I don't have a set list that's like, oh my God, these are all slow songs. What the hell do I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because at the end of the day, I still enjoy performing the most. Yeah. Being on stage, everything is just peaceful when I'm on stage. Like, I can think the clearest.
It's your space, basically.
Yeah, it's my space. It feels like my bedroom almost. Like the 2 places that I feel most comfortable, like the stage and my bedroom. Yeah, I'll only exit my bedroom to enter the stage. Yeah, I feel like that's my method of doing it. Like, I think about how people would react to the song live. And like, when I think about, should I go on a high note here? I'll think about like what the song needs and how I'll do that live, and how will I be tired? You know, I think about these things. More on the live thing then. And more can I sing it as like the 6th or 7th song, you know? You don't want to like be like halfway after 30 minutes. I think it's all like kind of important things that you need to think about also.
100%. Now, I want to take a step back, right? And ask you, because you have had over like a decade of experience in this industry. So like, from when you first started out to today, right? For specifically the Singapore music industry, like, what are some of the changes that you've observed? Like the more pertinent changes?
It's been ups and downs, I guess. I think there has always been support for Singaporean music.
Okay.
As in, there will always be a group of people, be it small or large, that will always feel compelled to support and enjoy Singaporean music.
Okay.
And that's the most beautiful thing, I think. Whether it being indie, like, because I started off with the indie scene. And like, when I first formed the band, we opened for like West Grand Boulevard, and it was so many old bands. Like, and that was it for me. I played at Scape. Weekend trip at Scape, and that was it for me. There was like 50 people in the crowd, and I felt like this is the peak of my career, you know? And I feel like you shouldn't ever stop appreciating that.
Okay.
We are a small country, and we are heavily influenced by a lot of Western media. So as a local artist, you will always feel like your competition isn't local.
Right.
So always, I think, like, for me, I know that as a baseline. So I'll always appreciate every little or large support that Singaporeans will have for Singapore music. And I think we should just look at it that way and cultivate it that way, and just grow it that way, you know, instead of like yelling support local. I feel like that shouldn't matter. Like, if you want to support local, support because it's good, you know, not because I'm yelling support local, you know.
Yeah.
And it's my duty as an artist to try and push it as far as I can. It's kind of like a snowmobile, like I said, like, when you pave the snow, everyone behind you that's kind of following in your footsteps will be like, this track is a bit easier to follow, you know?
Yeah.
Just like people have paved the way for me before.
Yeah.
Now I do things a bit easier because they've done it hard, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just an endless cycle of like, how do we make this place better? And that's just it for me.
When it comes to making music, I think, especially English music, right? There's kind of that possibility of looking at going global and going international. Like, do you think it's important for Singaporean artists to think about going global?
I think every artist should think about going global. I don't think any artist should think about like, this is just the small kampung that I want to be in. I mean, if you do, then that's fine. But I think that the world is so small, in fact, that it's almost borderless now.
Okay.
And you should just look at it that way. I think you shouldn't put so much pressure on yourself to be like wanting to perform for any specific market. That's too much pressure. There's too much like planning, I feel, for you as an artist, you know? I feel like you should just think about the world as your oyster. Think about the people who you want to like you. Yeah, that's the most important thing, because you can have 1 million followers, but your engagement can still be low.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can look a certain way and people can like you for that, but that doesn't mean they'll like your music. So you have to understand what kind of people you want to like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's mostly it, I think.
Fair.
Yeah.
I want to ask, like, when it comes to people who, I mean, a lot of the listeners who listen to this podcast, I would think are people who are about to graduate, or, you know, like thinking about, hey, what's going to be my life path, right? And I would think that there are musicians who are in that group. So if, let's say, a young Singaporean today has committed or is thinking about being a musician or an artist, you know, as a career, like, how should they go about it? Like what are some things that they need to think about?
From my perspective, I think the most important thing you should think about is the number of hours you are willing to put per day into becoming what you want to become.
Okay.
I think you need to understand what you want to become and then reverse engineer that and kind of, because you can go to like an academy, they'll teach you everything, like how to sing in front of a mic or how to,
right.
But if you can these things are things that you can identify yourself, you know what I mean? You can watch a YouTube video and figure out how to do these things. And if you just learn to identify them and then reverse engineer them, meaning like learn how to do these things, sing for 2 hours a day, pick up some vocal lessons, make sure you're doing it right. Not so you can sound like right, but so you can do it properly so you don't ruin it, Things like that are really important. Listen to artists that you want to become. Watch YouTube videos of breakdowns of their songs. That's something easy you could do. And just like learn to become the best version of yourself. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Got it.
And figure out what that means for you. Yeah. For some people, it might be like, I want to be like technically the best musician ever. Then you got to practice playing 8 hours a day. Some people want to like, I want to sing a little bit, but I want to dance. Then dance 7 hours a day and sing 1 hour a day. Like figure out what kind of artist you want to be. There's no format. It doesn't mean that you can play a musical instrument means you're a better artist than someone who can write but can't really sing this way, but writes better music. There's a space for everyone. Like just try to figure out what you can do at your best level.
Got it.
Because we all have our limitations, but we all have our potential also.
Got it.
So we got to figure those out.
Now, I want to ask you a very industry technical question, right? So throughout this conversation, you've mentioned being before an indie artist. And then, of course, you've also gotten label support as well. Now, as an artist, I think, especially someone who wouldn't know what each one entails, like what would you say are the advantages of like being an indie artist and also an artist under a label?
Money.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly money. Mostly having someone to upfront your project and go like, we trust you.
Okay.
We signed you, so we trust you. We have professionals here who have evaluated your potential, and we trust you with this amount of money to. And then that depends on how much they trust you, right? Like, are you a producer? Like, we trust you do everything yourself, or like we don't think you're a good enough producer. We'll get a producer for you. You can write yourself because you're a good writer.
Right.
Or you're a good producer, you're not that good of a writer. We'll hire a writer. It depends, right? But for the most part, it's money. But that comes with a bit of stakes also. Because when you invest in someone, you obviously want your investment to go well.
Yeah.
So you obviously want a bit of return onto that. That's something that you can never avoid. So being an independent musician, the difference would be if you could fundraise on your own, if you could produce yourself on your own, then for the most part, I don't see why you would need a label if you don't want it. It's mainly like resource contacts, international contacts. It's very, these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But there's no saying that an independent artist would do worse than a major artist, because it's really what kind of artist do you want to become,
right.
What kind of music do you want to make, and what kind of freedoms you would like to have, or what kind of anxieties you want to have. Like, I feel like being an independent artist has its anxieties, that some of which is too hard for me to deal with. I feel like there's some things that I just can't do to perform at my best self.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm completely aware of, that I need someone to handle for me. Because like I said earlier, like you really can't do everything by yourself. There's too much in this industry there's too much pressure for you to be able to be your best self and do everything yourself at the same time.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's a pros and cons thing. There's no upside or downside to either. It's really a balance.
Yeah. Now, being in this industry, right, we see how there are artists who thrive with the label that they align themselves with, and then there are artists who eventually like lock hits with their labels, right? So if let's say an artist in Singapore is thinking about signing with a particular label, like what are some questions that they should start asking to make sure that like this is the correct label to sign with?
Nah, I think it's not the label at all. People are getting it wrong. It's not the label, it's the people, it's the team.
Is a team.
You know what I mean? It's like, even if you're an indie musician, you hire a manager, and the team is, it's really the team that it's the people that you are working with on a day-to-day basis. People always tell me like, oh, you're working with this big corporate thing. Like, it's so different when the people you are working with are trying to make a difference. I'm a gut feeling kind of guy. So if this person makes me feel comfortable, and I feel like, for me, I feel like they believe in what I'm doing. That's always for me like really important. When they talk about my music, how do they talk about it? Like, are they excited? Are they talking about statistics, or are they talking about how it's making them feel? I don't know. You know, like, it depends on how comfortable you are working with the team. So it's really not about like which major label or whatever. I think anything as an artist, regardless of label or whatever, any project you're stepping into, you have to think about the people why would you want to work with shitty people? I feel like a lot of people in the entertainment industry go in because I want to be this, I want to be that, but then you end up working with a lot of shitty people. And that will just kill your career. It will kill your soul. It will kill your creativity. Yeah. So I think regardless of anything that you're stepping in, just see how the people make you feel. You know, see how comfortable you are.
Nice. So one of the things that I've noticed with the accessibility of streaming and whatnot is how so many people are now being able to very easily listen to Singapore artists. You know, for example, like even Spotify has like a Singapore playlist. And I feel like social media makes it a lot easier for people to share like their support for local artists as well. And then with that, then you just get more exposed, right? So where do you think all these will lead like the Singapore music scene in years to come? Like where do you see this going to? Because like I would say like maybe like 5 years ago, we would say, oh, you know, discoverability will be the result of social media, right? And here we are today with more people being able to discover. Like where do you think the next couple of years will lead Singapore's music scene?
I think firstly, on an artist level, artists should just focus more on what they want to do as artists and become their best selves, as opposed to think about like what I can do for Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like you have to think about yourself first, because once you become your best self, then all of us will be proud of you, you know? It's not like we are proud of you only because you're Singaporean. Right. We are proud of you because of the work that you put in, you know? Not because of where you are born.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think the future would be borderless. I don't think it'll be like a specific Singaporean artist have reached this particular level or whatever.
Okay.
But I do see like, oh, this Singaporean artist is touring the United States, or this Singaporean artist is really big in Europe, or this Singaporean artist is really big in Indonesia, Malaysia. There's no benchmark for made it. We should just get that out of our system. Singaporeans are so transfixed with this like benchmarking system of like grades and like how am I compared to the rest of the people in society. When you enter a Grab and you tell them you work in media, they're like, oh, how much money you earn is the first question they ask.
Right.
Because we immediately want to benchmark ourselves to see if like, is my job shitty? Can I do better doing this job? You know? I think we should just get that out of our system and just try to be the best musician, artist, creator you can be. Because like I said, the pressure, you don't need it.
Yeah.
You don't need that pressure to be your best self, especially to make art. You don't need this gossip. You need some of the feedback. You need feedback to be a better person, for sure. You don't need gossip. You don't need drama. You don't need all this. Just be good, you know? And when you're good and people hate you because you're good, that's the best kind of hate there is. You know? It's like, it's not your fault.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask for young people, let's say, who are perhaps just want to take that leap of faith into committing themselves into this career of being like a creative person, right? Like what words of wisdom or advice can you share with them if, let's say, there was just something that you would tell a young person today?
Have a plan. Give yourself benchmarks. I feel that's important. Like, okay, this year, what am I going to achieve? You know,
right?
Like, I feel like with artists, more than often go with our feeling, go with our emotion, and go like, I'll only want to be inspired when I'm inspired. Is the worst mentality for a writer and someone who creates. I think you need to set yourself up for success by allowing yourself space and time to create, and getting used to the idea of you can't always make things when you're happy. You can't always make things when you're in the mood, you know? You have to flex that muscle. You have to kind of work on different situations of working with different people. And like, the thing that I find most interesting about my job is that I get thrown into writing rooms with writers who have written with like K-pop artists, like Pussycat Dolls or whatever. And like, it always feels like they don't care, you know? They've written for all these, they don't care. They just want to like, let's write. And that's kind of the best thing that I've learned about this industry is that the people at the top, they really don't care about anything else but making good music and good art.
Right.
And that's kind of the environment that you need to surround yourself with. You know, find people who don't care. And find people who want you to be the best, you know?
Yeah.
Like people who don't have any ego, people who don't judge you, people who think you are great because you are you, people who see your potential, people who are honest with you. I think that's very important too. In my career, I've had my wife who is extremely brutally honest, and she has, I feel she has impeccable taste.
Okay.
Like I feel like she picked my winning idol song. She told me that you shouldn't sing a song that sounds exactly like whatever it is. You should pick something weird like Aerosmith and then sing it like the way you sing it, you know? Sing it like R&B or whatever. Pick a rock song, you know, like make it your own. And that stuck with me. Because in the whole frenzy of the competition, and with this feedback that's coming to you, you're like, who am I? What do I become? And to have that grounded voice telling me that, you know, this is you. Do you, man? You know, that was the most important thing I had in my career, I think. So if you can identify these people and believe them when they tell you you suck. Believe them when they tell you you are off pitch. You know, like keep these things in mind with an open mind and let them be honest with you. Put your ego down. Keep these people and just be true to yourself and be humble.
Yeah.
I think those are very important things.
Yeah. Especially when you know that they're coming from a good place. You know, they're not here to like criticize you for the sake of it. They're here to make sure that you do better.
Some of them don't come from a good place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but some people, but it's also up to you to be able to identify that. You know, I feel like as a person, as an adult, you should be able to identify who's good for you and who's not.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. In 2021, where information is so available.
All right. So before we end this podcast, I do want to talk about what's next for you as an artist. So I do know that you've been teasing a lot about like what's coming next for you. So maybe you can share with the listeners of this podcast, like what's next for Sezairi in the coming months or years.
So I've been working on some music with these producers from Vancouver that I've been wanting to work with for so long, and we've been working online. We've released 2 singles, Raindrops and Blue.
Yes.
Kind of like a little bit of a gloomy vibe compared to like the uptempo pop vibe that I've been doing. I feel like this pandemic has got me kind of depressed in a sense.
Okay.
I really wanted to encapsulate them in my music. Every time I listen to something of mine, it really reminds me of a period of time. And I think that's something really important in my music that I always want to have continuity in. Like, it's a place and time. Yeah, when you listen to it, it really brings you back to a place and time. And like, I'm just in this mood right now where it's starting to pick up. It's starting to be a little bit more mature. It's starting to be more serious. And I'm really excited to at how it's sounding so far. I think musically I've grown also. And I'm starting to do a bit more complicated things. I'm starting to do a bit more daring things, I feel. I'm starting to have more collaborators in terms of features, because I'm always a bit paranoid to have a featuring artist, because I'm like, what if I ruin this for you? You know, I always have this mindset. But this year I've been open to like working with people and going like, you know, I trust you if you trust me. Yeah, and it's been great so far. So I have a couple of cool collaborators for new songs. I'm so excited for the new songs to come out next year, and hopefully a full album, and hopefully a tour. Hopefully. Yeah. I hope so, within the region. Yeah. Play more music live. I think that's the thing that I dream about when I wake up in the morning and before I go to sleep is I see myself on stage. Yeah. I really do. Yeah, that's just where I feel like the best things happen for me.
100%. Yeah. Now, I do know I said that was the last question, but I have one final. This is the real final one. So a lot of artists have said that like COVID-19, the pandemic has really impacted the way they think of their music, their work as artists. And of course, you alluded to that a little bit, right? So maybe can I ask you like, when it comes to creating music, you know, how has the pandemic really changed your mindset?
I think when you get stuck somewhere, it really changes your perspective of the world. And it really forces you to look inwards, you know? I think a lot of people haven't really had the opportunity to just be by themselves without doing anything. We are always so distracted all the time. But I think this pandemic especially has forced me to look much deeper not only because I was stuck, but because there were so many things that happened in the pandemic. Like I lost my first pet, I lost a family member. I haven't seen my parents for more than a year because my mother is like ill and she can't be exposed to. It's been heavy. And I think that's a very interesting feeling for me to want to dive in, because for the most part in my adult life, I've always felt like sadness is something that I like to swim in, which is not entirely good, but I've always felt at home being not entirely too happy. So it's okay for me. And having to mirror that and look at that and go like, why are you like this? You know, like what is making you this way? I think that's a question that a lot of people have been asking themselves also.
Yeah.
And I think coming out of this pandemic, you'll see so many people going like, hey, you know, I want to be a better person because I've realized this about myself after this long not talking to anyone, or, you know, not having interaction with anyone.
Yeah.
And those realizations, I think, is what's going to make this new album really cool, because I've thought about this a lot. And I've thought about how it sounds, and I've thought about how I want it to make people feel. So I think it's going to be really cool.
Very, very nice. Now, you know that all of us here will be streaming it once it comes out.
Cool, thank you
so
much.
We will be so supportive. So that is my segue for you. So if, let's say, people want to find you on social media and also on all the different platforms, like where can they look?
I'm everywhere, mostly at Sezairi, Twitter, Instagram.
Okay.
Sezairi. But I'm on TikTok as Sad Boy Sezzles.
Oh.
Yeah, I just figured, whatever, you know. Sezairi was taken. What would 14-year-old Sezairi write? That was literally my thought process. I was like, Sezairi's taken. What would 14-year-old Sezairi do? Sad Boy Sezzles. Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, so you can find me there.
Very, very nice. So thank you, Sezairi, for
Thank you.
joining us on this podcast. Now, of course, if you want to listen to more, you can go check out our Spotify page, and also make sure you follow the Now Academy page on Instagram for more information. So once again, thank you, Sezairi, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll see you for the next episode. Thanks, guys. Bye.